Okay, let's go over a couple of things quickly here. Your normal operating range of pressure for your air brake system is between 100 and 125 pounds of pressure, okay? Now, in addition to the compressor and the air tanks, the compressor has a regulator, and that's what's circled in red there. And that's what keeps you in that range between 100 and 125 pounds of pressure. So when the pressure drops below 100, that's when the compressor will kick you in, take you back up to 125, all right? So the governor kicks in when the pressure drops below 100 and stops at 125. So again, your normal operating range of pressure is between 100 and 125. Is there anybody here that's taking a permit test yet? Okay, so if somebody on video is taking a permit test in the future here, don't confuse the operating range between 100 and 125 with what we call the safety relief valve that opens up at 150. That's what the safety relief valve looks like. Now, what's the purpose of the safety relief valve? Right. So if the regulator that is going to govern us between 100 and 125 doesn't work and the air pressure inadvertently continues to rise, when it gets up to 125, it's going to stop. Okay? Well, if it doesn't work and continues to rise beyond 125, if we didn't have the safety relief valve, what would happen? It would blow up, become a bomb or a missile. So we need that. So if you already have your permit, you really don't need to worry about this, but I want to bring this to the attention of people that are taking a permit test so they don't confuse this range with this relief valve. And then what you've all been doing in the ABBC process is practicing this, getting the low air warning signal to come on between 60 and 80, so it'll come on at 70, okay? If somebody's taking a permit test, there is likely to be a question on the permit test about the low air warning signal, and the question will be the low air signal will come on at 40, 60, or 80. What would the correct answer be? B is the correct answer, 60. Okay, A is wrong, or C is wrong, because it doesn't come on at 80, it comes on below 80. 79. Right. 60. So if 79 were there, it would be a correct answer, but that's why 80 is not a correct answer. All right, so the emergency brakes, we have two buttons. Red button, yellow button. The red button is for your trailer, the yellow button is for your truck. Okay? So those emergency brakes pop out between 20 and 40 pounds of pressure. So 25 pounds is what you're going to tell the examiner. For a B, you only have a yellow button. You don't have a red button for a B. All right? So again, Class A vehicles are going to have both yellow and red, yellow being truck, red being trailer. Your air loss rate for that 1 minute, this is with the motor off, parking brake released, foot on the brakes for 1 minute. And you're allowed to lose a maximum of 4 pounds for A, 3 pounds for a B. Now, during the test, ladies and gentlemen, you got your foot on the brake. You're doing this 1 minute air loss, okay? If the examiner says to you, how hard are you pushing on the brakes? Or if they say, push harder on the brakes, please maintain the amount of pressure that you use to stop the truck and nothing more than that. And don't allow them to intimidate you into pushing any harder. If you're pushing too hard on the brake pedal, your foot will start to do this. And when the foot starts to do that, what happens to the air? It leaks out, okay? So examiners that are doing that are screwing with people, trying to get them to mess up. Don't let them intimidate you into messing up. Just keep your foot on the brake and say, sir, this is the amount of pressure it takes to stop the truck. I mean, think about this. We're testing the brakes to see if they leak air using the amount of pressure it takes to stop the truck. Sounds like a good test, doesn't it? Why would we use any more pressure than we would use to stop the truck? We're not checking that under a panic situation. You know, how long are the brakes going to be applied in a panic situation? A few seconds. So this test, that's a 1 minute test, is done with, you know, sort of a gentle, firm application of the brake pedal. Not too hard, but enough to have stopped the truck. Okay?
They're going to ask me how much air pressure am I using, or how much pressure
No. That would be an application gauge. We don't have application gauges in trucks. That's not on the test.
I'm sorry, could you ask the question that they were going to, say the question that they were going to ask?
They might say to you, how hard are you pushing on the brakes? Or they might say to you, push harder on the brakes. And what I want you to do is just remain calm and just do what you're doing. Don't push any harder on the brake pedal. Don't allow what they say to cause you to push too hard on the brakes. Okay? All right. Those people taking a permit test, incidentally, there is a difference between the air loss rate with your foot on the brake versus foot off the brake. Both of these criteria are in the manual. So anybody taking a permit test, when you get the question as to how much air you can lose in a minute, you got to read the question very carefully, and you got to determine two things. Are you talking about an A or a B? And are you talking about foot on the brake or foot off the brake? Because that changes it. And on the permit test, they identify a B as a straight truck or bus, and they identify an A as calling it a combination vehicle. In other words, they're not going to say on the permit test you're driving a Class A vehicle. They'll say you're driving a combination. Or they're not going to say you're driving a Class B. They're going to say you're driving a straight truck or bus. So you have to be able to interpret straight truck or bus into a B and interpret combination vehicle into an A on the permit test. Yep.
How do you release the parking brakes?
Pushing the buttons in. Yep, that releases the parking brakes. Okay? You know, I know we're, see, remember I told you when we started the day, this is a class that needs to be repeated? Will you agree with me now? This is a class that needs to be repeated? I'm throwing a lot of information at you, and I'm throwing at you fast, aren't I? So you got to come back here and practice this stuff so that it sinks in, so you understand what's going on. You know, you're seeing it once in here, you're going to go outside and see it once this afternoon, and you're going to leave here going, boy, that's a lot to remember. And then you're going to come back, and 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 you will integrate this. Yes, sir? Yep. Yep. Yeah, and I'm going to show you that on the video. I'm going to show you a video here in a minute. Well, no, I'll show you on the video. The video explains that. We haven't done that yet, but the video will explain that. Okay? All right, good question. Now, I also want to explain this to you. What you see on the screen right now is what you are going to do on your road test. 4 pounds, air loss, 1 minute, engine off, foot on the brake. Okay? If the truck lost more than 4 pounds of pressure, they wouldn't let you test with that truck. They would claim the truck is not safe and cannot be driven. They're wrong. That's not how you determine. This test on the screen is not how you determine if the truck can be driven. The test you see on the screen that will be done on the road test is the way a mechanic tests a truck and trailer in order to pass annual inspection. Okay? So, to give you an idea where I'm going here. All right. All the lights are supposed to work, correct? Do all the lights need to work in order to pass annual inspection? Yes. Okay. So that includes the clearance lights, the headlights, low beams, high beams. Everything's got to work to pass inspection. Right? And that's once a year. All right. So one day you're driving your truck, and your left headlight doesn't work. Your right headlight does. The left headlight doesn't work. Are you allowed to drive that truck?
No.
Yes, you are.
If you're on the road.
You're allowed to drive the truck. Correct. You can get a ticket, and the way you avoid getting a ticket is you stop at the first opportunity to repair that headlight. Okay? And I would also suggest, to avoid getting a ticket, when you discover your headlight is out, then you send your supervisor a text or email. Fred, my headlight is out. Yeah, take a picture. That's a good idea. I didn't think of that, but that's an even better idea. But send them a message. Headlight's out. Where would you like me to fix it? I don't have one with me. Your dispatcher sends you a message back. There's a Flying J truck stop in 32 miles on exit 57. Pull in there, get a headlight, and put it in there. Thanks, will do. Click, send the message off. So halfway between where you are and this Flying J, you get pulled over. You got a headlight out. Yeah, I know, I'm on the way to fix it. Well, how do I know it hasn't been out for 10 days? Well, officer, let me show you the email I sent 20 minutes ago. Well, good job, driver. I wish there were more like you. Have a good day. See ya. I swear that's what's going to happen, okay? When you dot your I's and cross your T's, do everything you're supposed to do and document what you're doing in this industry, you're going to be fine. Now, your job is to inspect and report. A headlight doesn't put you out of service. Now, if both headlights were out and it was nighttime, are you out of service? Yes. So there's a difference between what it takes to pass annual inspection, and then there's out of service, which means it's not safe, can't be driven, and there's an in-between. And the in-between is, yes, there's a defect, it can be driven, but it needs to be fixed. Got that? And that's true of tires and lights, and it's also true of air leaks. Again, what you see on the screen is required to pass annual inspection. This is how you test for air leaks to determine whether you're out of service or not, which is quite different from the first one. This is done with the motor running. And what you're looking for here is to see if the compressor can maintain pressure between 80 and 90 pounds. Okay? So if you have this air leak, you're not out of service. Yes, it needs to be fixed. But to determine whether you can or cannot drive the truck, that's the test that's done. And notice what is at the bottom of this slide. Repairs should be made at first opportunity. That's so important, I want you to repeat that with me. Repairs should be made at first opportunity. Louder. Repairs should be made at first opportunity. So I'm not giving you permission to drive to California with an air leak. I'm saying you got an air leak, you test it, you send your supervisor a message, I got an air leak, where should I fix it? Stop at the Flying J at the 57-mile marker. Okay, thank you, on the way. And you stop there and get it fixed, okay? Now these examiners don't know that. I'm bringing this to your attention because I don't want you to be misinformed when you go out there, okay? I want you to know what you're supposed to do. And a lot of this inspection, ladies and gentlemen, is a dance. It's a theatrical production to pass a test administered by people that don't have a license to drive the thing they're testing you with. I mean, that in and of itself, you are being tested by someone that cannot legally drive a truck to determine if you can legally drive a truck. Does that make any sense? No. So the whole thing is screwy in the first place. So what I want you to understand is what we're doing today is we're focusing on this theatrical performance that you are going to master to pass your test, and then you are going to reinvent yourself in the real world. This isn't the way we do it in the real world, okay? This is not a practical pre-trip inspection. It's not the way I do it in the real world. Now, any of you involved that are here on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, we have more discussions about inspections. In fact, tomorrow Bob will be talking about daily inspections tomorrow. And he's going to be talking about them in the real world practical application, not this hokey theatrical performance thing, okay? Like I said, you're going to be pointing at components during this inspection. Yeah, that air hose is not leaking any air, and there's no air in it. There's no air in it, and yet you're going to tell him it ain't leaking any air, and he's going to listen to you and go, okie dokie, you got that one right. You got to be kidding me, really? But that's what's going on. I'm telling you, this organization, Driver and Vehicle Services Division, needs a swift kick in the butt. And the director should be kicked out and booted back to Wisconsin where she came from, okay? But this is sort of cultural in these, across the country they typically call them DMVs, driver motor vehicles. In Minnesota it's called Driver and Vehicle Services, DVS. But it's very characteristic across the country, this sort of complacent apathy towards this driver's licensing process. They don't care whether they're doing it right or not, just so it looks right. What are you talking about? We're doing an inspection. Well, you're not doing it right. Well, yes, we are. And they'll stand there all day long and say they're doing it right. Okay? And who's to stand up to them and say they're doing it wrong? I've sued the state of Minnesota twice, and I've won both lawsuits. And if I had enough money, I could sue them about a dozen times because there's so many things they're doing wrong. But I don't have the money to sue them over everything they're doing wrong. Okay? So study this material, memorize the material, memorize the process, pass the inspection, get yourself a license, and then the practical thing that I want to enforce on you about inspections in the real world, first and foremost, do the inspections. If there's a problem in the trucking industry, it's not that people don't know how to do it, it's that they're not doing it. They're too dang lazy. Okay? Is there anybody in this room that can't see fluid on the ground? Is there anybody in this room that can't hear a noise? Is there anybody in this room that can't feel a vibration? Well, then you're qualified. Do your inspection. And you do your inspection, and if you see anything that you think might be wrong, what do you do about it? Report it. And that's another reason you hear me, those of you that are here during the week, hear me preaching to you, go to work for a major carrier, go to work for a major carrier, go to work for Dart, Warner, Swift, Schneider. Why? They got good equipment, and they take care of them. And they don't run the front tires down to the point where the tread is too thin. They don't do that. They don't run the brakes down that much. They replace the trucks at 450,000 miles. These big rigs are good for 1,000,000 miles, and they replace them at halfway through that cycle. It's good equipment. It isn't falling apart, held together with duct tape and baling wire. Go to work for somebody that's got 3 trucks, and you may very well be doing that. So don't do that. Go to work for a major carrier. Check the fluids, check the lights, check the tires, check the brakes. Okay? And you see something, you report it, document it. There you go. You've done your job. It's easy to do this. Now, I'll also warn you, a lot of places that you might go to work, the people that are working there don't do their inspections. So you show up and do your inspections, and what are your coworkers going to say to you? What are you doing? What are you doing? We don't do that here. Now, why are they saying that? Well, one of you is, either you or them are doing something wrong. And what they're trying to do is make you wrong. Problem is, you're right, they're wrong, so just go about your business. Just go about your business, do what you're supposed to do, and ignore those coworkers that are too dang lazy to do their job properly. And take pride in it. I take a lot of pride in operating these trucks safely, efficiently. I take a lot of pride in what I do, okay? And I mean, imagine how proud I am that I've operated a business for 17 plus years with 0 accidents. Not one reportable collision. Not one insurance claim. I take a lot of pride in that. And you should too when you drive safe, okay? In fact, I'll make a deal with all of you. You go out and drive for 1,000,000 miles with a safe record, no at-fault accidents in 1,000,000 miles. It'll take you 7, 8 years to do that. Come back here, show me the little certificate that your company gives you, because they will. And I'm taking you and your wife out to dinner, or husband or spouse or significant other. I'm taking you out to dinner to any restaurant in the cities. Any restaurant you want. Ocean Air. And I'm paying. And if it's wintertime, we'll have to meet in Key West, because that's where I'll be in the wintertime. Okay, I've got a video to show you that walks you through this whole inspection process. Does anybody need a quick restroom break or want to order food?
Yeah, food. It's coming in. I gotta check it.
So it's been ordered?
Jimmy John's.
They'll bring it right in here.
Okay, I told them to come to the counter.
Well, they'll direct you back here. Okay. So we can put the video on then? All right, when the video's done, I got to take off. I got some other things I'm going to do. In fact, I won't be back till next week. Pat will be in here at 1 o'clock to work with the people that are doing that. But you guys, after this video's over, take a short break, 10 minutes, and then you're going outside to work with Tim and practice what you've learned so far this morning. And then you're going to come back here Saturday or Wednesday or Saturday or Wednesday and keep coming back. Make sense? Okay, so let me put this video on. Hi, I'm Bill Collins, the owner of Interstate Truck Driving School. Well, those of you watching today are tuning in to watch our air brake pre-trip inspection test. If you want to get a CDL and make yourself a decent living, the first step is get your permit. Next, you need to take your CDL road test. And that's what this video is all about. We're going to show you how this inspection should be done properly. I'm going to play the role of an applicant taking the test. We have one of our instructors, Bob Christensen, is taking the role of the examiner, which is a perfect role for him because he was a state examiner for 25 years. I'm going to use my high-tech video sunglasses, and we're going to videotape this process to make sure you know exactly what to point to, exactly what to say, so that you can pass your road test. Good luck, and let's get going.
Interstate truck driving school. If you want a good career, we got the right tools.
Hey, I'm Bob. I'll be giving you a test today.
Hi, Bob. I'm Bill.
Okay, Bill. Let me tell you how this is going to work today, okay? This is a pre-trip, just like you do every day when you go on your job, okay?
Mm-hmm.
A little bit different than what you do on your job. This is basically a one-sided check. Now, if there's some things on your sheet that are on the other side, then we're going to go over there and check them, okay?
Okay, all right.
You can just point them out and we'll go over and check it out, okay? Now, I want you to kind of explain your way through them, not just that this looks good, okay? I want you to kind of expound a little bit. Tell me why it looks good, what kind of problems you're looking for. If we see a problem, let's talk about it. We'll talk about it, okay?
Okay, all right.
Okay, you can start anywhere you want on the sheet. I'm going to take this sheet away from you and give you a fresh sheet here, though,
Okay,
okay? And you can go in any order here that you want, okay?
all right. Okay,
Okay.
so now do I have to do all of these?
I crossed out the sections that you don't need to do,
Okay. All right, so
There
anything,
are some sections that you don't need
all right,
to do.
so anything crossed out I don't have to do.
Exactly.
Okay, well, what I learned at school, they want me to do all the lights first, so I like to do the lights first, if that's okay.
That's fine. I'll help you with some of the lights that you can't do. I'll help you with the brake lights, even the backup light.
Okay.
I'll help you with that, okay?
All right.
And the high beams.
All right, so I'm going to start it up and put all the lights on.
Okay. Before that we do that, Bill, I'm just going to check a couple of inspection stickers here real quick, okay?
Okay.
Alright, there. Okay, we'll just take a look at your inspection sheet here. Okay. Alright.
All right, so I've got the low beams on. Okay. All right, so I'll go around this way. I have a turn signal and running light here. There's the side reflector
Okay.
that I'm required to have. So that's intact and working. Low beams back on again. Four-way flashers right and left. All 5 clearance lights are working. From here I can also see the clearance lights up at the top of the trailer there on both sides. Kind of hard to see in the light here, but they're working. And then again here I have the clearance light, excuse me, the reflector over here is intact. Turn signal here is working. Then working my way back. Up here, those white reflectors are required in the top and the side of the cab there. So those white reflectors are there and intact. Again, I already showed you the clearance light up and top. And then I've got this reflective tape that runs all the way down the side of the trailer. I've got a turn signal here that's working. From here we can also see the four-way flashers and the running lights on the back of the tractor. Coming back, I have a side marker light and then also a side reflector here. Up on top, again, it's hard to see with the sun up there, but the clearance light up on the top is working. I've got my tail lights here with the four-way flashers on both sides. I've got my clearance lights here in the center of this at the bottom. And then it's hard to see in the daylight here, but I have my license plate light working. Okay. So here again, I've got the side marker in the rear, the reflector on the rear, reflective tape all the way down the side, the flasher, the signal again, and running light on the side here, reflector all the way down, and then again clearance light up at the top, and reflectors here on the side of the cab. Now what I'll do is I'll turn the four-way flashers off and put the left signal on. So I'll check the left signal real quick here. Left signal there is working. And then left signal working here. And then we'll go over here, we'll check the right turn signal. So there's my right turn signal flashing. And we can see it on the back of the tractor there. And flashing here. Yep, so we're good there. So now if you'd help me with the brake lights.
I will.
All right.
Watch your rear there.
All right. Okay. Okay. So now what I'll do is I'll start the front of the vehicle here. Now the first thing it says on the front of the vehicle is the mirrors. So I'm going to check, make sure that the mirrors are securely attached. The mounting brackets, the mirrors themselves. Look and make sure that the mirrors are, the glass is not broken or cracked. They're clean. I'll check adjustment when I get inside. So I'm going to open the hood. So the first thing under the hood here is the oil level.
I'm not going to make you check any hot fluids or anything like that. You don't really have to touch any hot parts as long as you got something just to point with your little flashlight or whatever you have there.
Very good. Okay. So there's my oil dipstick.
Okay.
So to check the oil, I would do this with the motor off.
Yes.
I would pull that out, wipe it clean, reinsert it, pull it back out again, and there'll be a high and low mark on it that I would check to make sure it's in the proper level there. If it's below the low, I would add oil. Coolant level. Now on the other side there, you can see the plastic expansion chamber reservoir. Since it's transparent, I can see from here that it is the proper level. If it were low, I would add coolant, obviously. Power steering fluid right here on this truck, and again this is a plastic reservoir, transparent, and you can see that it's at the maximal level there. There's the minimum cold, so if it was below that level, then I would know I need to add fluid to it. Water pump. Now the water pump is going to be right in the center of the motor there behind the fan, and I would check the water pump, make sure it's securely attached, and check to make sure it's not leaking. The alternator is going to be on the other side. Let's walk over there. So there's the alternator. I want to check to make sure that the alternator is securely attached, that the wires are securely attached, everything's functioning properly. And I might as well mention at this point the belts that drive the alternator, the water pump, the power steering pump, air conditioning pump. I check those belts to make sure that they are none of the belts are missing. I check to make sure that the belts aren't damaged, frayed, cracked, and then properly tensioned, which means I would push on the center of the belt to look at the deflection. The deflection should not be more than about 3/4 of an inch. All right, that's alternator. So leaks and hoses. There's a wide variety of hoses all over the truck. Some are these this is an air hose actually going into the intake. This is a power steering line. Excuse me, this is an air conditioning line, I'm sorry. There are radiator hoses. Here's a radiator hose up on top. So there's all kinds of hoses. Here's some more hoses going to the coolant system. And I check all of those hoses, make sure they're not damaged, cut, frayed, make sure they're not leaking, make sure that the clamps are tight and not missing. So those are my hoses. Air compressor is back on the other side here. So my air compressor, kind of hard to see, but it's right down in here. The air compressor is an integral part of the motor. It's driven internally. Actually, it's right back here, I'm sorry. So the compressor is driven internally. I'm checking that to make sure it's securely attached. It's not leaking. It could be leaking air. It could be leaking oil. So I'll make sure nothing's leaking. There's no master cylinder on this truck. This is a manual transmission, so there's no automatic transmission fluid to check. Steering box and hoses. Here's the steering box right here. The important thing with the steering box is to make sure it's attached securely and there's no leaks. There's power steering hoses going to it, so none of the hoses are leaking. The steering box itself is not leaking. I got a little bit of moisture right there, but nothing to be concerned about. All the bolts are secure, nothing's loose or missing. Steering linkage. So now this lever here, that's the pitman arm, drag link, tie rods. What I'm doing is I'm checking to make sure all of these connections are secure. The bushings are in place, there's no damage. Some of these will have a cotter key in them. I want to make sure the cotter keys are in place if there's a cotter key. Look in here, make sure there's no visible signs of that pitman arm loosening up. So make sure all of my steering linkage components are securely attached, nothing's loose or missing. This one back here does have a cotter key in it. And then tires. My front tires on the truck, I'm required to have 4 30-seconds of tread depth. I check the tread, make sure it's not worn unevenly or damaged. According to the manual, I'm not allowed to have retreads on the front. I check the sidewall, make sure the sidewall is not damaged, cut, abrasions on the sidewall. I would check the proper inflation pressure. That's actually listed on the sidewall here someplace, the proper inflation pressure. I use an air gauge to do that. And when I check the air pressure with the gauge, I check the valve stem there, make sure that it's not leaking, make sure the cap's in place. And then the rims here, check the rims, make sure the rims aren't damaged, bent, cracked, or welded. Lug nuts. So I have 10 lug nuts here. I'm checking all of these to make sure they're securely attached. None of the lug nuts are missing, and make sure they're not loose. Now, if one of these lug nuts were loose, I'd probably see a shiny thread here or maybe some shiny abrasion on the wheel. And so there's nothing on any one of these lug nuts that gives me any indication that anything's loose. Next thing on my checklist is the hub oil seal. This one actually does have a little plastic reservoir, so you can actually see fluid right down here in the bottom of it. The cap is intact and it's not leaking any fluid, grease. If that were leaking, it'd be very obvious because centrifugal force would throw it all over the place. Then to my front suspension, I got springs and shocks. Now I have leaf springs here in the front. There's 2 leaf springs there. What I'm checking with the leaf springs, make sure they're not cracked, broken, shifted, or missing. Older trucks would have multiple leaf springs, and that would be a problem. These newer trucks, it's not much, but still I check to make sure that the springs are not cracked, broken, missing, or shifted. The shock absorbers are back here. So the shock absorber, I check the mounts on the top and the bottom, make sure they're securely attached, there's no loose or missing bolts. The bushings are in good condition, they're not appear to be damaged, and it's not leaking any fluid. Then the U-bolts. The U-bolts connect the springs to the axle. The important thing there, make sure the U-bolts, neither one of them are missing. Make sure the bolts are tight so nothing's loose or missing, cracked, broken, with those U-bolts attaching the spring to the axle. And then the spring mounts. So that's where the spring mounts to what I would call a spring hanger that mounts to the frame of the truck. And the spring mount is going to have a bushing in it to allow the flexibility for the suspension. And again, I want to make sure nothing's loose or missing, nothing's cracked or broken. I've got both the front mount, and then there's also a mount in the rear back there. So I'd have to check both of those, make sure everything was secure, nothing missing, nothing loose.
Okay.
And then I have my front brakes. First I have my brake hose, my air hose. So there's my air hose. I check the air hose, make sure it is securely fastened on both ends here. Check the hose, make sure it's not damaged, cut, cracked, chafing, that it's not rubbing on anything. This second little line here, incidentally, is the ABS sensor line, but that's not really on the checklist, but I just thought I'd point that out. And then the air brake chamber is next. Here's the air brake chamber. The air brake chamber is securely attached. There's no damage to the air brake chamber. It's not dented, cracked, or rusted, and it's not leaking any air. And then the slack adjuster. This is the slack adjuster assembly here. I look for loose or missing parts. That pin and cotter key that holds the adjuster rod to the bracket and the pivot arm to the bracket with that pin and cotter key. I make sure none of those parts are loose or missing. And then to check the brakes for proper adjustment, with my foot off the brake pedal, I would pull on this forward to see how far it moves. According to the manual, it can't move more than 1 inch. And then the brake drum and brake lining, I'd look in here, and you can see that the brake lining is down here. I'm checking the thickness of the brake lining, make sure it's at least 1/4 inch thick. Check for cracks in the drummer lining, can't have any cracks. And also check for grease or oil that might be leaking from the wheel seal onto the brakes. That would be very bad, so I make sure that that's dry as a bone and not leaking any fluid. And the checklist here does mention rotor and disc. These are drum brakes, so there's no disc brakes on these trucks. And now I'm going to check this middle section here. I've already talked about the mirrors, the door. The important thing with the door, make sure the hinges are secure and that the door latches securely. Fuel tank, cap and leak. So here's my fuel tank. On this truck I only do have a tank on one side. These are the straps that hold the tank in place. They can rust, break, get loose, so I'll make sure they're not loose, rusted, or broken, securing the tank properly. The cap is snug and not leaking any fluid. The tank itself is not leaking any fluid. And on this truck I also have another tank. This is for the DEF fluid, the diesel exhaust fluid, which is a fluid that's used for environmental improvement of emissions. So same thing, everything's secure, cap's tight, nothing's leaking.
Hi, Bill Collins, Interstate Truck Driving School here with your latest breaking news on pre-trip inspections. The state of Minnesota has just told us that they're including battery box on the pre-trip inspection checklist. So that's why we're interrupting this video to show you that real quick. Now, this is one of the trucks that we use on the road test for you Minnesota students. These are Freightliner M2s. And what's interesting is that the battery is actually underneath the cab here. And there's an access panel to the battery here inside the door, so the door would have to be open in order to access the battery. Now, you're not going to access the battery on the test. You're simply going to point out this little cover and say that the battery is located underneath the cab, access through this cover. You can see the bottom of the battery here. If you look around the corner, you can almost see the connections. And what you're going to tell the examiner is that the battery itself is securely attached, that the cables are securely attached, and that there's no corrosion on the cables to the terminals of the battery. But again, you are not going to open the cover and actually get access to it, okay? So that's what you tell the examiner about the battery box for Minnesota tests. Now, for you Wisconsin residents, we have a truck specifically that we take over to Wisconsin for y'all, and that truck does have a more traditional battery box cover, so let's go over and take a look at that. Okay, so here's our Wisconsin truck that we take over to Hudson for Wisconsin tests, and here you can see as far as the battery box is concerned, there's a more traditional battery box cover. It's plastic, and it's held on with these rubber straps here. So you Wisconsin residents, when you're taking your test over there, point the battery box out to the examiner. Tell them that the battery box cover is securely attached with these straps. Do not remove the cover, but explain to the examiner that to check the battery, what you would do is remove the cover, check to make sure that the batteries are securely attached, check to make sure the cables are attached securely, check to make sure there's no corrosion on the cables as they attach to the terminals. So there you have it, the latest breaking news from the state of Minnesota and the state of Wisconsin regarding pre-trip inspections. And now back to your regularly scheduled programming.
Catwalk and steps. The catwalk that I use to get in and out of the vehicle is secure. No foreign objects on it, it's not bent, damaged, broken. I've got little steps that go up here to this catwalk in between the truck and the trailer so that if I get up there I don't fall. So make sure everything's secure, nothing interfering with that. Lights and reflectors we've already done. Drive shaft. Now on this truck, we can come right down here and we can see the drive shaft. Some trucks you can't really see the drive shaft that well. The drive shaft, I want to make sure that it's not bent. I want to make sure that the U-joints are secure and that there's no foreign objects, you know, like rocks or something that got caught up in the U-joints that would cause some damage. So securely attached, no foreign objects, and not bent. Exhaust system. Well, we'd really be better off going to the other side to look at the exhaust system. So here's the exhaust system on this truck. It's rather elaborate for emission purposes with that DEF fluid. But the important thing from my perspective is to make sure all of the exhaust components are tight. So I'm checking all the clamps, make sure all the clamps are secure, the brackets are secure, and looking for any signs that something might be loose or leaking, especially up underneath the cab. I don't want any exhaust leaking up into the cab and impairing my ability to drive safely. So all the clamps are tight and everything looks secure with no apparent sign of leaks. We can see the frame from this side. The important thing with the frame are these longitudinal cross members going from side to side, making sure all the bolts that are holding the frame together are secure, nothing's missing, nothing's loose, there's no cracks or damage to the frame itself or the longitudinal cross members that are securing it. So that's my frame. And then rear tires, we might as well stay on this side.
Can I ask you what that wire's for there, Bill?
That's actually a wire that I can pull on to drain my air tanks.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, I'm supposed to drain my air tanks to remove any moisture. So it just makes it easier for me rather than reaching underneath there. All right, rear tires. Now, we talked about the front tires. The rear tires are only different in two respects. I'm allowed a minimum of 2 30-second tread depth on the rear. And then because these are duals, I have to look in between here and make sure there's no damage or foreign objects stuck in between the duals. But otherwise, the tire is checked the same way as what I explained with the front tire. The wheel is the same explanation as I gave you up in front. No dents, cracks, rust, or welds. The lug nuts, exact same explanation I gave in front. Nothing missing, nothing loose. Hub oil seal is a little different. This is the seal here on this rear axle. But here again, I'm looking to make sure that there's no fluid leaking from the outer part of the hub here. And then I also have to check spacers if I had spacers. Now these are Bud wheels. This type of wheel is self-spacing the way they install. And so when you put the Bud wheels on, they create the space in there. Some of these older wheels have a spacer in them, and if there's a spacer, I would check and make sure it was not damaged, cracked, broken, centered properly. The old Dayton wheels, yep. All right, so next on my checklist here, springs, shocks, and airbags. Now this truck does have air ride suspension, and these are the airbags here. I don't really want to crawl underneath there, but that's the airbag there. Important thing with the airbag, make sure it's not damaged and it's properly inflated. I'd also check the airbag mounts, the top and the bottom, make sure they were secure, not damaged, cracked, or broken. And then this truck also has like a half a spring, and so really we call that a torque arm. It's installed the same way as a spring. It has a hanger here, attaches to the axle there with U-bolts. So in that regard, it's the same as a spring. Make sure nothing's cracked, missing, loose, shifted. Make sure the U-bolts are attached properly, just as I said up in the front. See if there's anything else about the rear suspension here. Springs, oh, shocks. The shock absorbers are back there behind the axle. Same explanation I gave you up in front. Securely attached, no fluid leaking. U-bolts I mentioned, spring and air mounts. So again, we have the mount up in the front here. Since it's a torque arm, just goes halfway across, same as the spring hanger up in the front. Brake hoses and lines. On this truck, it's easy to see that brake chamber over there on that side, I guess. We can see the air hoses there, same explanation as I gave you up in front. You can see the air brake chamber there, same explanation I gave you up in front. Now the slack adjuster is really hard to see, but it comes out the back of the chamber. You can just barely see it coming out the back there. And there is a difference with checking these rear brakes. With the rear brakes, what I have to do is chalk the wheels, release the parking brake, and then pull on the slack adjuster, and it can't move more than an inch. So that is different from the front. And then brake drums and brake linings. The brake linings are going to be inside the wheel here, just as in the front. Same inspection, 1/4 inch minimum thickness, no grease or oil on the brakes, no cracks in the drummer lining. Rear of the vehicle talks about doors and lift. That would be applicable to a truck, but not a tractor. Splash guards, which are mud flaps. The ones up in front here aren't required. They're handy to have, but these are the required ones back here. These mud flaps, securely attached, no damage. Those will break in the wintertime when ice hits them and it's cold and cause problems. So they're securely attached and intact. Before I go any further, I should talk about the connections between the truck and the trailer. So on the first thing on the list here are the air and electrical lines as they come off the back of the tractor. So I have the two air lines connected there with fittings. I make sure they're secure. The important thing is make sure that they're not leaking. I'm checking for any sort of damage on the hoses or electrical. Make sure there's no cuts, cracked, chafing, splices, especially on the electrical. The electrical attaches over there. You can see it says Phillips. I will make sure that it's latched in place there. And then it's real important that these air hoses and the electrical line, as it goes between the truck and the trailer, is not touching anything here. This loop here doesn't pivot back and forth as I steer. So that's okay, but right in here, I can't be touching anything. The next thing on the checklist regarding the tractor, are the mounting bolts. We can probably see that a little better on this truck back here. So this fifth wheel, and again, I don't want to go underneath, but the fifth wheel, you can see those bolts that mount the frame of the fifth wheel to the frame of the truck, and I want to check all those mounting bolts, make sure they're securely attached, nothing's loose or missing, no cracks or damage to the frame. Then the locking jaws or lever. Now the locking jaws are going to be in the center of the fifth wheel. And what I would do is I would crawl underneath there and use my flashlight and look up underneath it where the jaws are to make sure they're securely attached. But I've been told by the school not to crawl underneath there, so I'll just have to explain it. Then the release arm, that's going to be back over on the other side. So right here is our release arm, and it's all the way in, which is the locked and secured position.
Okay.
Now some of these will have a safety latch incorporated in them. This particular fifth wheel does not have a safety latch. So the release lever is in the locked and secured position. And then also on the checklist it mentions sliding fifth wheels. The pins that secure that. This is not a sliding fifth wheel, so I have no sliding fifth wheel pins to check. Then on the coupling devices of the tractor, the air electrical lines again, checking to make sure that they're securely attached. Here's my emergency line, always on the right. Service line over there is always on the left, electrical in between. I'm checking to make sure everything's securely attached. In fact, on this truck they even have a tie wrap there on the electrical to make sure that that's secure. So again, no leaks, no damage, cuts, cracks, chafing, no splices in the electrical, not touching the deck of the tractor. Next thing on the checklist is the kingpin. Now the kingpin is the knuckle that's attached on the trailer that's locked into my locking jaws. And I can't see that with it disconnected, but with the trailer disconnected I would check it, make sure it's not bent, cracked, damaged, and locked in the jaws as it hooks up. The apron, now the apron is the underside of the trailer. This part on here that sits on top of the fifth wheel, you can see the apron only goes back so far. I want to make sure that that apron is not damaged, not cracked, damaged, and that it's properly lubricated. And then the gap. There should be no gap between the fifth wheel here and the apron of the trailer. If I was on slightly uneven ground, there might be a little tiny bit of, a 1/16 of an inch of a crack or something. But there should be no big, ½ inch or 1 inch gaps in between that apron and that fifth wheel. Then the trailer, on this van type trailer, the bulkhead, the front of it, I'm looking to make sure that it's structurally secure. No obvious signs of damage or wear or structural issues. This is a former refrigerated trailer, so the front of it is locked off there. Okay, so that's my bulkhead. Header board would refer to a flatbed. Lights and reflectors I've done. Then landing gear. So landing gear is here. The important thing with the landing gear is make sure the landing gear is all the way up and secure. Make sure that the landing gear crank is secure, not hanging loose. And I check the structural integrity of the landing gear mounting frame. Make sure there's no damage there. The frame of the trailer, much like the frame of the tractor, I'm checking for structural integrity, checking the cross members that go across from side to side. This one appears to be welded without any bolts. If it had bolts, I'd be checking the bolts. Tandem release refers to sliding axles. This is a stationary axle, so there's no sliding release or pins on this. Doors, lift, and ties. Now there is a little door on the other side of the trailer. So I should show you that. So what I'm checking here on the side door is I'm checking the hinges, make sure everything is secure, make sure it's latched securely. This one is actually sealed. Interstate seals that trailer and doesn't allow me to go inside. So the door is secure, hinges and latches are secure. So that's the side of the trailer. Lights and reflectors are already done. Trailer wheels, tires. Tires are the exact same thing as what we check on the rear of the tractor. The 2/32, checking in between because it's duals. This retread sort of separation here is acceptable. It doesn't appear to be coming loose. That's just sort of a manufacturing defect. Yep. Rims, same thing as what I mentioned up in front. No dents, cracks, rust, welds. Lug nuts, same thing that I've mentioned the previous two. All the lug nuts are securely attached. Nothing's missing or loose. Hub oil seal. Again, here's another one that does have a little plastic sight glass where you can look in there to see that there's fluid, and I can see fluid in there. It's securely fastened and not leaking any fluid. And again, these are Bud wheels that are self-spacing. Springs, shocks, and airbags. Now this trailer does not have airbags, but we can see the shocks in the center there. Oh, it does have airbags. I stand corrected. If you look in the back there, there's airbags. Kind of hard to see, but same thing that I checked up in the front of the back of the tractor. The airbags aren't damaged or leaking. Mounts secure top and bottom. Shock absorbers we can see there. And this is another torque arm assembly. So there's no leaf springs here. And the way this torque arm assembly is attached, it's attached with big bolts over there you can see, so there's no U-bolts on this one. But all the mounting bolts are secure. Nothing's loose or missing. Yeah, so that's my spring, shocks, airbags, U-bolts, spring, and air mounts. Brakes, we can see the air brake chambers quite easily here. Same inspection as in the front. Air hoses, you can see the two air hoses coming out the top of the chambers. Same inspection as previous. We can see the slack adjuster coming out the back. You can see the pivot arm and the push rod of the slack adjuster. Same inspection as the rear of the truck. The wheels have to be chalked, brakes released. Pull by hand, can't move more than an inch. And then check for loose or missing parts. And that appears to be a manually adjusted brake back there. Brake drum and brake linings we can see on the other side there pretty easily. 1/4 inch on the brake lining again, no grease or oil, no cracks in the drum or lining. So that's my rear brakes. The rear of the trailer, we have doors and lift. Now on this trailer there is a lift gate, and what Interstate has done here is they have a chain attached to the lift gate and then a securement device attached to the trailer with the chain running in between to secure the lift gate so it doesn't fall down inadvertently. The doors behind it, the hinges, as far as I can tell, are all secure. Can't really see in there, but everything that I can see appears secure. Splash guards, again the mud flaps here, securely attached, no damage, nothing's missing. So that's the same as previous. And lights and reflectors we've already done. So I think that's my outside inspection.
Okay. Hop inside and we'll do the...
Okay, I'll put the hood down and we'll get inside. Okay, so I'm going to start my inside inspection here. The first thing, I need to put my safety belt on. And what I want to do is I want to check my safety belt make sure there's no cuts or frays to the belt itself. Make sure it latches securely here. The attachment here is secure. The attachment on the other side is secure. The next thing I'm going to do is check my emergency equipment. Now I have 3 things to check here. Down here is the fire extinguisher. I check to make sure it's securely attached, and then I check to make sure it's charged. There's a little gauge there. I want to make sure it's in the green. My fuses are right here, sir, in the ashtray. So I've got the fuses, and then back here behind you I've got the reflective triangles. I've got 3 reflective triangles in that red box. So all of that's in place. Safe start. I'm going to make sure that my parking brakes are on, make sure the truck is in neutral. Then I'm going to put my foot on the brake, depress the clutch all the way, and I'll start the truck. And release the clutch gradually, make sure it's not in gear. So that's my safe start. Now, the next thing on the checklist is the temperature gauge, which is right over here. It's reading about 170, 175 degrees. The important thing with the temperature gauge is to make sure it doesn't go all the way up to about, on this gauge it looks like 250 would be bad. And the other thing that would tell me that it was too high is that a little red light would come on, and the little red light is not on, so that's how I know that my temperature is okay. So next thing on my checklist here, oil pressure gauge, which is right above it. It's reading about 25 pounds right now. The oil pressure gauge does go up with engine RPM. It also is a little higher when it's cold. The important thing with the oil pressure is to make sure it's not too low. If it was too low, again, a little red light would come on to warn me, and the little red light's not on, so that tells me that my oil pressure is okay.
Where's the normal range?
Well, you know, every truck's a little different, but between 25 and 50 apparently with this truck.
Okay.
Amp meter and voltmeter gauge, so we have a voltmeter right in the center there, and you can see it's reading 14.2. Now that's good. The minimum would be 12 plus, so if it were 11 something or 10 or whatever, anything below 12, then that would tell me my electrical system is not charging properly. So 14.2 is good. Air gauge, I have 2 air gauges on this truck, primary and secondary tanks. They're holding pressure steady right now. That's my main concern, is that I don't have any air leaks. And we're going to do an air loss check here in a few minutes. We'll be using those gauges. Lighting indicators. There's my right turn signal indicator. There's my left turn signal indicator. If I put on the 4-way flashers, they both flash. If I turn my headlights on, and then my high beams, you can see the high beam indicator is working correctly. So those are my lights, indicators. Horn. The electrical horn works. I also have an air horn, but I don't want to scare anybody, so I'm not going to honk that. Heater and defroster. Alright, so I'm going to put the heater defroster in the defrost mode. I'm going to turn the fan all the way up, and then I should have air blowing up on the dashboard. And yep, there's air blowing up there to clean the windshield off. So that's working properly. Windshield and mirrors. Again, mirrors adjusted properly, clean, not broken or cracked. Windshield, most important thing is no cracks, especially in the driver's view. No damage, chips, no stickers, no obstructions on the windshield, and clean. Wipers and washers. So I put the wipers on, and then I'm going to hit the washers here, and we should be getting fluid out of them. Yep. So the wipers and washers are working correctly. Parking brake. Well, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to check the parking brake by attempting to pull forward with the parking brake on. So parking brake trailer, parking brake truck, and I'm going to attempt to pull forward with those on gently, just to make sure they're holding. and you can feel the truck kind of move there a little bit. And then what Interstate Truck Driving School wants me to do is they want me to isolate these individually, do them collectively and then individually. So I'll push the red button in first, leaving the yellow button out, which is the parking brake in the truck. And that in fact holds. Now I'm going to reverse that. I'm going to put the trailer brake on, release the brake on the truck, attempt to pull forward again very gently, and you can see that the trailer is attached and the brakes are working on the trailer. Then the next thing I have to do is I have to pull forward and stop to check the service brake, make sure that the service brake is operating properly. So I'm going to pull forward just a little bit here, and then I'm going to stop, and you can see that the truck stops straight. The brake pedal felt nice and firm, nothing mushy about the brake pedal. Next I'm going to do what's called the air brake check. The first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to leave my foot on the brake pedal. I'm going to leave the two brakes released as they are, and I'm just going to turn the key off, turn the key back on, and I'm leaving my foot on the brake pedal. So I've got my foot on the brake just the way I had it a second ago when I stopped, and I'm watching these two air gauges now. And what's important is that I can't be losing air. If I lose anything more than 4 pounds of pressure in 1 minute with this Class A combination, then that means I've got a serious air leak and a safety issue. So we'll wait the entire minute. I don't know if you can see from over there, but the needles are not moving at all.
I can see them.
Yep. I can also listen for leaks. Even though I got a little road noise here, I don't hear any leaks. I don't hear any leaks behind the dashboard. I don't hear any leaks outside the truck, and I don't see the needles moving at all. And again, I have normal pressure on my brake pedal, just the way I would stopping at a stop sign.
Right. Yeah.
All right, so that's been a minute. All right.
All right, that's good.
So now what I want to do is I want to check what's called the low air warning device. When I'm going to pump the brake pedal to get the air pressure to go down, and when the air pressure gets between 60 and 80 pounds of pressure, then these warning signals are to come on. I should have a light and or buzzer. So the key is on, so I'm going to pump the brakes. And there's my light, and you can hear my buzzer. And this one's at about 60 pounds, that one's about 70 pounds.
Good. That's good.
So they came on at the correct time. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to check the emergency brakes. So I'm going to continue to pump the brake pedal to get the air pressure to go down. And what I want is I want these two buttons to pop out, indicating that the emergency brakes are operating properly. So I'm going to pump the brake pedal. And those two popped out perfectly, about 25 pounds on the one gauge and 40 pounds on the next gauge, which is perfect because they're supposed to pop out between 20 and 40 pounds. And then I've got to check to make sure that these brakes are going to hold. So I'll start the truck back up, put it in gear, and again I'm going to make an attempt, a weak attempt a bit, but I'm going to make an attempt to pull forward and make sure that those brakes hold, and you can feel the truck kind of moving there a little bit. That tells us that those brakes are holding. So now what I'm going to do, in neutral, I'm going to rev the engine up to about 1500 RPM or so to build air pressure. You can see that the air pressure is going back up. In this truck they go up one at a time. Some trucks they both go up simultaneously, but there my low air warning signals come off. And again, that operates anything below 60 to 80 pounds, so that came off when they both got up to 80, so that's working correctly on that side of it too. When I get all the way up to pressure, you'll hear the pop off of the air underneath the truck go right there. So that tells me I'm all the way up to pressure. So that completes my my inspection.
Okay. All right. Overall, Bill, I thought you did an excellent job. Couple of things. Just one thing I didn't on the fifth wheel. I didn't hear you mention the platform that is welded on good. I may have missed it.
Oh, okay. Yep.
We were going pretty good there. Well, only one suggestion now. Winter's coming up. On your doors, I would check the weather stripping on the door when you open it up. You don't want any cold air. You want to 800-mile trip and find out the weather stripping's pretty bad.
Right,
But usually
right.
you can tell when you open and close the door if that's bad. And the only other suggestion I would have is on your exhaust system, look for carbon deposits where you've got some escaping.
Oh, like soot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
just
okay.
look for carbon deposits. Other than that, you did an excellent job, and I see no problem. You passed that pre-trip with no problem at all.
Very good.
Excellent job.
Okay.
Okay. Congratulations.
All right, thanks.
Okay.
All right.